When everyone humiliated the Black Maid, the Mafia boss stood up, and his words silenced the room. It was a grand evening at one of the most luxurious venues in the city, where the rich and powerful gathered to celebrate. The clinking of crystal glasses and soft chatter filled the air. But in the midst of the luxury, there was someone who did not belong to this world of opulence. Standing behind the scenes, she carefully carried out her duties, making sure every guest had their needs met. She was the maid, black, humble, and out of place in a room full of high society. Her name was MiraV, and though she tried to fade into the background, she could feel the eyes of the guests on her. Her black uniform, her tired face, and the way she moved with the practiced grace of someone who had learned to remain invisible were all too apparent to those around her. She had learned the art of being unseen, unnoticed, and unheard, just as every person in her position had to do to survive in a world where status meant everything. But tonight, things were different. As she approached a group of guests to refill their glasses, she heard the laughter before she even saw them. They were talking about her, loud enough for everyone to hear. One of the women in the group, dressed in an elegant gown, made a snide remark about MiraV's appearance. "Look at her," the woman said, her voice dripping with disdain. "How does someone like her even get hired in a place like this?" The group laughed, and the woman continued, "She probably thinks she belongs here." MiraV kept her head down, refusing to acknowledge them. She had learned not to let such remarks affect her, but tonight, the words stung more than usual. She took a deep breath, focusing on her task, but the laughter followed her, echoing through the grand hall. As she walked past another table, a man leaned over and muttered under his breath, "Does she even know how to serve properly? Or does she just stand there looking lost?" The mocking words cut through the air like daggers, and MiraV's face flushed with humiliation. She wanted to shrink into the shadows, to disappear into the walls of the grand ballroom. But instead, she stood tall, gripping the tray of drinks harder, trying to control her emotions. She had been ridiculed before, but tonight, it felt different, more intense, more hurtful. She turned her head to the side, hoping no one could see the tears welling up in her eyes. Just then, the doors to the ballroom swung open, and in walked a figure that immediately commanded the attention of everyone in the room. The atmosphere shifted as all eyes turned toward him. The man was none other than Vincent the Hammer DeMarco, one of the most feared mafia bosses in the city. His presence was like a storm rolling in, powerful and undeniable. Dressed in a tailored black suit, his every step exuded authority. The laughter and chatter seemed to fade as the guests parted, making way for him. But Vincent did not come to the center of the room like most would expect. Instead, he stood in the back, silently watching as MiraV continued her duties, still holding herself together despite the cruelty that surrounded her. As the laughter from the guests grew louder, something changed in Vincent. His piercing eyes narrowed, and for a brief moment, the room fell silent. His gaze landed on MiraV, and without a word, he began to move toward her. The guests didn't know it yet, but everything was about to change. MiraV, who had always been invisible in a crowd, suddenly felt the weight of his eyes on her. She tried to keep her composure, but her heart raced. What would he do? Would he join in on the mockery like everyone else, or would he stand up for her? The laughter in the grand ballroom continued to fill the air, but for MiraV, it felt like the sound was getting muffled, as though the world was closing in on her. She stood there, her heart pounding in her chest, trying to hold back the tears that threatened to spill over. She had endured this before, the sneers, the condescending comments, the hurtful stares. But tonight, it was different. Tonight, it felt like her entire existence had been reduced to a joke, and she was the punchline. She was just a maid, just a servant in a world of luxury. As she turned to walk away, hoping to escape the jeers, she felt something change in the room. The energy shifted. The laughter stopped. The hum of conversation died down. She looked up and saw him, Vincent the Hammer DeMarco, the mafia boss who ruled the city with an iron fist. He was standing at the far end of the room, his cold, piercing eyes fixed on her. The room seemed to part for him, as though the very walls knew who he was and made way for his presence. He didn't speak a word. He didn't need to. His presence alone commanded respect. MiraV had heard the whispers about him. The ruthless, untouchable mafia boss who never showed mercy, not even to his closest associates. They said he was a man of few words but many actions, and that his reputation was built on fear, not respect. But as he stood there, just watching her, something in his gaze was different. He wasn't looking at her with disdain like the others. No, his eyes held something deeper, something she couldn't quite understand. Was it sympathy? Concern? Or was it something else entirely? Marie could feel her knees tremble, but she stood her ground. She wasn't going to let the humiliation get the best of her. She had learned long ago that showing weakness in a world like this was a death sentence. The room remained silent, all eyes now on Vincent as he slowly made his way through the crowd. It was as though time itself had slowed down. Every step he took seemed deliberate, each one a declaration of power. The whispers that had filled the room earlier were now replaced with a tense silence. The guests, who had once been so vocal in their mockery of Marie, now watched in awe and fear as Vincent approached. When he finally reached her, he didn't speak immediately. Instead, he stood there, looking at her with those intense eyes. For a moment, it felt like the world outside of the two of them had disappeared. There was only Vincent and Marie, standing in the center of the room, an unspoken understanding passing between them. Then, in a voice that was low and commanding, he spoke. "You don't belong here," he said, his gaze never leaving hers. Marie was taken aback by the words, but not for the reason she expected. He wasn't mocking her. He wasn't belittling her like the others. He was acknowledging the truth. She didn't belong here, not in this world of wealth and privilege. She was just a maid, a black woman in a sea of opulent white faces. She had never felt more out of place than she did right now. But then, Vincent did something unexpected. He turned to the guests who had humiliated her moments before. His voice, when he spoke again, was cold and lethal. "If anyone here has a problem with her, you have a problem with me," he said, his words echoing through the room like a warning. The guests stood frozen, unable to respond, as Vincent's gaze swept across the room. For the first time that night, Marie felt a sense of power. She was no longer the target of mockery. She was no longer invisible. She was seen. But what happened next shocked everyone in the room. Vincent turned back to Marie, his expression softening just a fraction. "Are you okay?" he asked, his voice gentler now, almost caring. Marie blinked, stunned. It was the first time anyone had ever shown her kindness in a place like this, and it was coming from a man whose reputation alone had made him feared by everyone around him. Her voice caught in her throat as she tried to find words. She was overwhelmed. I'm fine," she managed to say, though it wasn't entirely true. She wasn't fine. But in that moment, she didn't need to be. Vincent had changed everything with just a few words. The guests who had once belittled her were now looking at her with envy and fear. The power had shifted, and it was clear that Vincent was not a man who would tolerate disrespect for anyone, especially not for someone as humble as Marie. As the silence lingered, Vincent's voice cut through the air again, this time with a finality that left no room for doubt. "If anyone has a problem with her, they can leave. Now," he said, his tone unwavering. And just like that, the room, which had once been filled with laughter and mockery, was now silent. The guests, who had been so quick to laugh at Marie, now found themselves shrinking back in fear. No one dared to challenge the Mafia boss. Marie could hardly believe what was happening. She had gone from being the subject of ridicule to being the center of attention, but in a way she never imagined. Vincent DeMarco, the man who could bring empires to their knees with a single word, had stood up for her. He had silenced the room with his words, and in doing so, had given her something she never thought she would have, dignity. The silence in the room was palpable, and for the first time that evening, Marie felt like the center of attention, but not in the way she ever expected. As Vincent, the hammer, DeMarco stood before her, his commanding presence still hanging in the air, something shifted inside her. She had always been invisible in this world of wealth and privilege, but now, for the first time, she felt seen. The guests who had once mocked her now turned their heads, their gazes filled with a mixture of fear and respect. They no longer saw the maid they once belittled. They saw someone with the protection of the most feared man in the city. It was surreal. "Are you okay?" Vincent's voice, though soft, still carried the weight of someone who was used to being obeyed. Marie looked up at him, her eyes wide in disbelief. She had spent so many years hiding from the world, learning how to avoid attention, how to shrink into the background. And now, Here was a man who was not only paying attention to her, but was demanding others do the same. I'm fine, she stammered, not sure whether she was lying to him or to herself. Vincent looked at her for a moment, his intense gaze softening, if only just a little. Good. Because you should never have to deal with that kind of disrespect. The words were simple, but they felt like a weight had been lifted from her shoulders. She had never heard such words from anyone, especially not from someone of his stature. The power in the room had shifted, and Marie could feel it in her bones. For the first time, she was not just a maid. She was a person worthy of respect. The guests, who had once laughed at her, now looked away, unable to meet her eyes. But Vincent wasn't done. He turned to face the crowd, his voice booming across the room. Anyone who thinks it's acceptable to treat another person like that needs to leave. Now, his words hung in the air like a challenge, daring anyone to object. The atmosphere had gone from celebratory to tense, and the once lively conversation was replaced with uneasy silence. One by one, the guests began to look at each other, unsure of what to do. The woman who had mocked Marie earlier looked around nervously, as though trying to gauge whether the situation could still be salvaged. But there was no escape from the truth. Vincent's gaze swept across the room, his eyes sharp and unwavering. No one moved, no one spoke. They were all too afraid of him, of what he could do. You, Vincent said, pointing at one of the men who had been laughing just moments ago, get out. The man hesitated, clearly unsure of whether to comply. But one look at Vincent's face told him everything he needed to know. The man stood up, his face pale, and hurried out of the room without a word. One by one, others followed, each leaving with a sense of shame, their heads low, unable to look Marie in the eye. As the last of the mocking guests exited the ballroom, Vincent turned his attention back to Marie. He didn't speak immediately, but his eyes were filled with something she hadn't expected, regret. I'm sorry you had to go through that, he said, his voice quieter now. Marie was taken aback. She had never expected such kindness from someone like him, a man whose name alone could send chills down anyone's spine. She opened her mouth to say something, but no words came out. She didn't know how to thank him, how to express the overwhelming gratitude she felt in that moment. You deserve better, Vincent continued, his tone gentle but firm. You shouldn't have to put up with that kind of treatment. No one should. His words felt like a balm on a wound she hadn't realized was still bleeding. She had spent so many years trying to prove her worth, trying to make herself invisible so she wouldn't have to deal with the prejudice, the disrespect. And now, Vincent had done the unthinkable. He had not only seen her, but he had also defended her, in front of everyone who had ever looked down on her. For the first time in a long time, Marie felt like she mattered. Vincent's next words shocked her even more. I want you to come with me. We'll talk, privately. Marie blinked, unsure if she had heard him correctly. Me? She asked, her voice trembling. Vincent gave her a slight smile, though it was still a bit too cold to be truly comforting. Yes, you. It's time we have a conversation about how things should really work around here. He motioned for her to follow him, and without thinking, she took a step forward. The room, now empty of the mocking guests, felt different. It felt like a place where she no longer had to hide, where she could finally be herself. As Vincent led her out of the ballroom, Marie realized something she hadn't considered before. Maybe this was the moment her life would change forever. Maybe, just maybe, she was no longer just a maid. She was someone worthy of respect, someone who had been given a voice by the very man who had once been the symbol of everything she had feared. As Marie followed Vincent through the grand corridors of the mansion, she couldn't shake the feeling of disbelief that still clung to her. She had always been used to hiding, staying out of the way, enduring insults without ever speaking up. But tonight, everything had changed. Vincent had done the unthinkable. He had stood up for her when no one else would. And now, here she was, walking beside him through a mansion that felt more like a prison than a place of luxury. They reached a private study, tucked away from the chaos of the party. The heavy oak door creaked as Vincent pushed it open. He gestured for her to enter first. As she stepped inside, the room was dimly lit, with leather-bound books lining the walls and a large desk dominating the center of the space. It was a room that screamed power, a place where deals were made and lives were shaped. But right now, it felt strangely inviting. Marie took a seat across from Vincent, who leaned against the desk, his posture casual yet commanding. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The silence stretched, and Marie felt the weight of his presence pressing down on her. She wasn't sure what to say or even what to expect. Vincent, the infamous Mafia boss, was known for his ruthless dealings, for his ability to make people disappear without a trace. Yet here he was, showing her kindness, something she had never thought possible. Finally, Vincent broke the silence. "I know you're probably confused right now," he said, his voice steady but gentle. "You're not the first person I've helped, but I can see it's different with you. I don't know what it is yet, but something about you stands out. You deserve more than this life." Marie was stunned by his words. For years, she had believed that she was destined to be nothing more than a maid, a shadow in the background of a world that didn't care about her. But now, sitting across from Vincent, it felt like maybe there was more to her life than just survival. "I don't understand," she whispered. "Why me? Why are you helping me?" Vincent sighed, pushing himself off the desk and walking toward the window. He stared out at the city lights below, his expression unreadable. "Because I've seen too many people like you. People who are overlooked, treated like they don't matter. But I see you. I see the strength in you. And maybe, just maybe, I want to make sure you know your worth." Marie blinked, trying to process what he was saying. She had never thought of herself as strong. She had always thought of herself as just getting by, doing what she had to do to survive. But Vincent's words were different. They made her feel like she had a purpose beyond the cleaning and the serving, beyond being invisible. "I never asked for this life," Marie said, her voice shaky. "I never asked to be treated like this." Vincent turned to face her, his eyes locking with hers. "I know, but the world doesn't always give us what we deserve. Sometimes, we have to take it for ourselves." He walked over to the desk and pulled out a thick envelope, sliding it across to her. "This is for you. I want you to have it." Marie looked down at the envelope, unsure of what it was. When she opened it, her eyes widened in shock. Inside was a check, an enormous sum of money, more than she had ever seen in her life. "What is this?" she asked, her voice trembling. Vincent sat back down and looked at her with those intense eyes. "It's for you to start over. Take it, and go do something with your life. You don't have to stay in this world of servitude. You have a choice now." Marie felt her breath catch in her throat. She had never imagined that someone like Vincent would offer her such an opportunity. She had always been stuck in this cycle of poverty, working just to survive. But now, for the first time, it felt like there was a way out. "But I don't know what to do with it," she said, her hands shaking as she held the check. "I've spent my whole life cleaning, serving, just trying to make it through each day. I don't know anything else." Vincent leaned forward, his expression serious. "That's exactly why I'm giving you this chance. You've been stuck in this life for too long. Now it's time for you to live for yourself. Find what makes you happy, what makes you feel alive. You've been invisible for too long, Marie. It's time for you to step into the light." His words hit her like a wave, and for the first time in years, she felt a spark of hope. Maybe, just maybe, she could have a life beyond the walls of this mansion. Maybe she could find a future where she wasn't just a maid, but someone who had a real purpose. Vincent stood up, walking toward the door. "Take your time," he said. "But remember, this is your chance. Don't waste it." As he left the room, Marie sat there, staring at the check in her hands, feeling a mixture of fear and excitement building in her chest. For the first time, she didn't feel trapped. For the first time, she felt free. Marie sat in the private study, staring at the check in her hands, still trying to process what had just happened. Vincent DeMarco, the powerful Mafia boss who had just moments ago silenced an entire room of mockers, had given her an opportunity she never dreamed possible. A chance to leave behind the life of service, of being invisible, of being nothing but a face in the crowd. The room was still quiet, the only sound the ticking of an old clock on the wall, and her heart beating in her chest. She could hardly believe it. She had spent so many years of her life just surviving, doing what she had to do to make ends meet. Her job as a maid had always been her identity, but now, with the check in her hand, everything seemed different. The world she had known, the world where she was nothing more than a shadow, felt distant. The possibilities of a new life swirled in her mind, but they were terrifying. What if she failed? What if she couldn't make it outside of this life? She had no education, no skills beyond what she had learned to survive in the service industry. But then, She remembered Vincent's words, "You deserve more than this life." The weight of his gaze, the sincerity in his voice, gave her strength. He saw something in her, something she had never seen in herself. And now, it was up to her to decide what she would do with this chance. Marie took a deep breath and stood up, feeling the solid ground beneath her feet. She wasn't going to let fear hold her back. She wasn't going to let her past define her future. It was time for her to take control of her life. She left the study, the check still in her hand, and stepped into the hallway. The mansion, which had once seemed like a gilded cage, now felt like a place she could leave behind. As she walked toward the door, her mind raced with the possibilities. She could go back to school, get a job that didn't involve cleaning up after others, maybe even start her own business. She could finally live a life of dignity. But as she reached the door, her hand on the handle, a thought stopped her in her tracks. What about the people she had left behind? The other workers, the ones still trapped in the same cycle she had been in? She had been given a chance, but what about them? What about the people she had worked alongside for so many years? The women who cleaned, cooked, and served without ever getting the recognition they deserved? Marie turned back, her decision made. She wasn't going to walk away from this life without doing something to help the others. She knew that if she truly wanted to make a difference, she couldn't just leave them behind. She needed to find a way to bring them with her, to give them a chance at the same freedom and respect she had just been offered. She walked back toward Vincent's study and knocked on the door. When he answered, she stepped inside, her voice steady but determined. "I can't just leave," she said. "Not without helping the others. There are people here who deserve a chance too." Vincent's expression softened, and for the first time, Marie saw a flicker of admiration in his eyes. "I know," he said quietly. "I've seen it too. But you have to start with yourself first. You can't help others until you help yourself." Marie nodded, understanding the truth in his words. She couldn't save everyone, but she could be the example. She could show them that it was possible to break free, to live a life of dignity, even when the world had told them they didn't matter. "I'll do it," she said, her voice firm. "I'll take the money and make something of myself. And when I do, I'll come back and help the others." Vincent smiled, a rare, genuine smile that softened his usually hard features. "That's the spirit. Just remember, you have the power to change your life. Don't let anyone take that away from you." Marie left the mansion that night, the check still in her hand, but now with a purpose. She didn't know where her journey would take her, but she knew one thing for sure. She was no longer just a maid. She was someone with a future, someone who had the power to shape her own destiny. And she wouldn't stop until she had built a better life for herself and the others who still struggled in the shadows. Marie had left the mansion, the weight of the check still in her hand, but her heart felt lighter. She had made a decision to take control of her life, to change everything that had been holding her back. She would no longer be a maid, a servant hidden in the shadows of wealth and privilege. She would make something of herself. But as she stepped into the streets of the city, the reality of what she had just done began to settle in. She was standing on the edge of a new life, a life that was uncertain, but full of possibilities. The first thing she needed to do was find a place to live. She had no family in the city, no friends to turn to, and no real support system outside of the job she had just left behind. She walked down the busy streets, her eyes scanning the signs for rental apartments. But everything seemed too expensive. The money Vincent had given her was a start, but it wasn't enough to change everything overnight. Still, she pushed forward. She couldn't go back. She had already made the decision to leave that life behind, and she wasn't going to let anything stop her. The next few days were a blur of apartment viewings, applications, and job searches. Marie had never had to make decisions like these before. She had always just followed the routine. Wake up, work, go home, sleep. There was no room for anything else. But now, she was learning to navigate a world she had never been a part of. It wasn't easy. There were times when she felt like giving up, when the weight of everything she had to do felt too much to bear. But then she remembered Vincent's words, "You deserve more than this life." And she pushed on. Eventually, she found a small apartment in a quiet building on the outskirts of the city. It wasn't much, but it was hers. For the first time in her life, she had her own space, a place where she could breathe without the constant pressure of being judged or looked down upon. It wasn't luxury, but it was a start. With a roof over her head, Marie began to look for work. She applied for jobs in stores, cafes, even as an office assistant. But she quickly realized that the skills she had spent years honing, cleaning, serving, working long hours for little pay, weren't the skills employers were looking for in this new world she was trying to enter. For the first time, she felt the sting of her lack of education, the weight of her past experiences that she had tried so hard to leave behind. But then, one day, as she sat at her small kitchen table, scanning the job listings again, her phone rang. It was an unknown number. She hesitated for a moment before answering. "Hello," she said, her voice uncertain. "Marie," a voice on the other end asked. It was Vincent. "Vincent," she asked, her heart skipping a beat. "Yes, it's me. I've been thinking about you." His voice was steady, but there was an edge to it, something that made her sit up straighter. "I know you've been struggling, and I want to help. There's an opportunity one think you'd be perfect for, something that will give you a chance to get ahead." Marie felt a rush of hope. "What is it?" she asked, leaning forward, eager to hear more. "I've been in contact with a few businesses," Vincent said, "and they're looking for someone like you. You've got the skills, the work ethic, and most importantly, you've got the heart. This could be your way in." Marie's mind raced. She had never imagined that Vincent would go so far to help her. She had thought that once she left the mansion, once she left that world behind, she would be on her own. But here he was, offering her a lifeline, a way out of the cycle she had been trapped in for so long. "I'm willing to vouch for you," Vincent continued. "But it's up to you. I'm giving you the opportunity, but you have to take it." Marie's heart pounded in her chest. She had always been afraid of asking for help, of relying on others. She had spent her whole life trying to survive on her own. But now, she realized, it wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about thriving. It was about creating a future for herself, not just scraping by. "I'll do it," she said, her voice filled with determination. "I'll take the opportunity. Thank you, Vincent. You've given me a chance I never thought I'd have." There was a pause on the other end of the line, and then Vincent's voice softened. "I'm glad to hear that. I know you're going to make the most of it." The conversation ended, and Marie sat there for a moment, taking it all in. She had been given a chance, a real chance, to change her life, and she wasn't going to waste it. As she looked out the window of her small apartment, she realized that the road ahead would be difficult. It wouldn't be easy, but for the first time, she felt ready. She had a future, and she wasn't going to let anything take it away from her. She had come too far to turn back now. The days that followed Vincent's call felt like a whirlwind of changes for Marie. She had never imagined that she would be sitting at a table, signing a contract for her first real job in the corporate world. It wasn't much, just an entry-level position as a receptionist at a local law firm. But for Marie, it was everything. It was a chance to prove to herself, and to everyone who had ever looked down on her, that she was capable of more than just being a maid. She had never known what it was like to be treated with respect in a professional environment. The closest she had come to office work was cleaning the same floors and wiping the same desks that belonged to people who treated her like a shadow. But now, the world felt different. She had a job, a real one, and she was determined to make the most of it. The first few weeks were challenging. She had to learn everything from scratch: how to answer the phone, how to greet clients, how to handle the daily tasks that everyone else seemed to do effortlessly. There were moments of doubt, times when she questioned whether she was truly capable of fitting in. But with each passing day, she grew more confident. She learned to speak up when she didn't understand something, to ask questions instead of pretending to know it all. And, bit by bit, she earned the respect of her colleagues. It wasn't easy, but Marie was no stranger to hard work. She had been working all her life, first as a maid, then as a waitress, always striving to make ends meet. But this time, she wasn't just surviving. She was thriving. And the best part was, she was doing it for herself. One day, after finishing a long shift at the office, Marie sat in her small apartment, sipping on a cup of tea and reflecting on how far she had come. She thought about her old life, the one where she was invisible, the one where she had never dared to dream beyond the walls of the mansion she had served in. And she thought about Vincent, how his belief in her had changed everything. Without him, she would still be stuck in that same cycle, too afraid to leave, too afraid to try something new. Her phone buzzed, interrupting her thoughts. It was a message from Vincent. She smiled, her fingers quickly tapping out a response. "How's the new job going?" he asked. "It's going well. I'm learning a lot," she replied, pausing for a moment before adding, "Thank you again for everything." Vincent's reply came almost immediately. "You're doing great. But don't forget, this is just the beginning. Keep pushing forward. You've got the potential to go much further than you think." His words filled her with warmth. She had never expected Vincent to be so supportive, but he had proven time and again that he believed in her. And in return, she was determined not to let him down. As the weeks turned into months, Marie began to see the fruits of her hard work. She had become more than just a receptionist. She had been promoted to office manager, responsible for handling the daily operations of the office. Her colleagues now looked to her for guidance, and she had earned the trust and respect of everyone she worked with. But it wasn't just about the promotion or the new responsibilities. What mattered most to Marie was the confidence she had gained in herself. She no longer saw herself as someone who was destined to clean up after others, someone who was invisible in the grand scheme of things. She was a woman with a future, and she was in control of her own destiny. Yet, despite all the progress she had made, a part of her still felt incomplete. She had achieved success in the corporate world, but something was missing. She realized that her true passion had always been helping others, the same way Vincent had helped her. The idea had been in the back of her mind for a while, but now it was clear. She wanted to give back. She wanted to help people who were stuck in the same cycle she had once been in, to show them that there was a way out. But to do that, she needed to take her next big step. One evening, after another long day at the office, Marie sat at her desk and began to research ways she could help people in need. She looked into nonprofit organizations, mentorship programs, and ways to get involved in the community. She realized that there was so much more she could do with her newfound position and influence. And so, she made a decision. She would use her success to help others, to give them the same opportunity she had been given. She would open doors for those who were still invisible, still trapped in the same cycle of poverty and hard work, just like she had been. The next day, Marie walked into Vincent's office, her heart pounding with excitement and nerves. She had a proposal, something that could change everything for those who had been overlooked for far too long. When Vincent saw her, he stood up from his desk, a smile spreading across his face. "Marie, what's on your mind?" he asked. Marie took a deep breath, her nerves fading as she found her voice. "I want to give back," she said. "I want to start a program to help people who are stuck in jobs like I was. People who feel invisible, who don't know that there's a way out. I want to show them that they have the power to change their lives, just like I did." Vincent studied her for a moment, then nodded. "I think it's a great idea," he said, "and I'll help you make it happen." Marie smiled, feeling a rush of gratitude. She had come so far, and now she was about to take the next step toward making a real difference in the world. She wasn't just going to live her life for herself. She was going to change the lives of others, too. Months passed since that pivotal night when Vincent DeMarco had stood up for Marie, offering her a lifeline she had never imagined. Now, sitting in a newly established office, Marie's heart swelled with pride. She had worked tirelessly to launch the program she had dreamed of, a mentorship and job placement program aimed at helping women in positions just like hers, women who were often invisible, overworked, and underappreciated. It was a rainy afternoon when the first class of mints walked through the doors. Marie stood at the front of the room, her nerves tingling, but a sense of purpose grounding her. This was her moment. As the women filed into the room, many of them looked at Marie with cautious eyes. They weren't sure what to expect, having likely been let down before, just as she had been. But Marie had worked hard to build a reputation based on trust, and she knew that trust was the foundation of what she was offering. "Welcome to the program," Marie said, her voice steady. "This is not just about finding a new job. It's about changing the way you see yourself, about understanding that you are more than what the world has told you. You are not invisible, and you do not have to stay stuck in the same cycle." The women exchanged glances, some skeptical, others hopeful. Marie could see the uncertainty in their eyes. She had been there. She knew the feeling of wondering if someone could really help you break free from the life you had known for so long. She smiled and continued, "I'm here to help you, and I have people in high places who will support us. People who believe in second chances. But I also need you to believe in yourselves. This is about taking control of your future." That day, the program began. Over the next few weeks, Marie worked one-on-one with each woman, guiding them through resume building, interview preparation, and self-confidence workshops. She made calls, networking with business owners and HR departments to create job opportunities for them. She saw each of these women grow stronger, their doubts slowly replaced by determination. For the first time, many of them could see themselves in roles they had never thought possible. As they celebrated their first job offers, Marie realized that she had given them more than just employment. She had given them the tools to believe in their own worth. One of the women, Ava, came to Marie one afternoon with tears in her eyes. "I just got the job," she said, her voice shaking. "I'm going to be working in an office, answering phones, handling customer service. I never thought I'd get a chance like this." Marie hugged her tightly, feeling a swell of pride in her chest. "You earned it," she said softly. "You worked for this. You just needed someone to help you see that." That moment was a turning point for Marie. She knew this was why she had left her past behind, why she had taken the chance to step out of the shadows. It wasn't just about helping herself anymore. It was about lifting others up, showing them that they, too, had the power to change their lives. As the months passed, the program continued to grow, and more women found themselves in better jobs, with better pay, and with the kind of respect they had never been shown before. Marie knew that what she had created wasn't just a job placement service. It was a movement, one that was giving women a voice in a world that had once told them they were invisible. And then one day, as Marie was preparing for another workshop, she received a message from Vincent. It was short and simple, but it meant the world to her. "I'm proud of you. Keep going." Marie smiled, her heart swelling with gratitude. Vincent's support had meant everything to her. He had given her the chance to step into the light, to build something real, and now she was passing that gift forward, helping others to do the same. But she knew that her work wasn't done. There were still so many women out there who needed the same opportunity she had been given. She couldn't stop now. She had a responsibility to continue. As the program continued to grow, so did Marie's sense of purpose. She was no longer the quiet maid, invisible in the background of a lavish world. She was a leader, a mentor, a woman who had taken control of her life and was now giving others the chance to do the same. And with each new success story, each woman who walked through the doors and into a better life, Marie knew she was making a difference. She had broken free, and now she was helping others break free too. It was a journey she would never stop walking, and she knew that the best was yet to come. As Marie's program continued to grow and the success stories began to pour in, she couldn't help but reflect on how far she had come. It wasn't just the women she had helped that mattered. It was the life she had built for herself, one step at a time, starting with the leap she had taken months ago when she had walked out of that mansion and into the unknown. Her success wasn't just about getting a new job or starting a program. It was about reclaiming her dignity and purpose. She had discovered her own worth, and now she was helping others do the same. One afternoon, as she sat at her desk, reviewing applications for the next cohort of women to join her program, her phone rang. It was Vincent. Her heart skipped a beat at the sound of his name. "Marie, I need to see you," Vincent said, his voice steady but urgent. "Can you come to the office?" Marie's mind raced. She hadn't seen Vincent in months, but his message made her feel a sense of unease, a sense that something had changed. She quickly agreed to meet him. As she walked into Vincent's office, the familiar feeling of intimidation struck her. The room was the same as it had been the first time she had stepped into it. Dark wood, expensive furniture, and an air of power that seemed to linger in the air. Vincent was standing by the window, looking out at the city skyline. When he turned to face her, there was something in his eyes that she couldn't quite place. It wasn't the usual cool, calculated gaze she was used to. It was concern. "What's going on, Vincent?" Marie asked, her voice soft but steady. Vincent motioned for her to sit, his face serious. "I've been hearing things," he said, his tone low. "Things about the program you've started. People are starting to take notice. And not all of it is good." Marie felt her stomach twist. She had always known that she was challenging the status quo, that what she was doing might attract attention, but she never imagined that it would draw anything but praise. "What do you mean?" she asked, trying to keep her voice calm. Vincent took a deep breath, as if weighing his words carefully. "There are people who don't like the idea of giving people like you and your immense opportunities. The wealthy, the powerful, they don't want to see people from your background rising up. And some of them are doing everything they can to undermine your program." Marie felt a wave of frustration wash over her. She had worked so hard, faced so many obstacles, just to get to this point. The thought that someone would try to tear down everything she had built was infuriating. But at the same time, she felt a sense of clarity. This was not going to be easy. She had known that from the start. She wasn't just fighting for herself anymore. She was fighting for all the women who were counting on her. "I won't stop," she said firmly. "I've come too far to let anyone stop me now. I've seen how much this program has changed lives. I can't just walk away because some people don't like it." Vincent looked at her with a mixture of admiration and concern. "I knew you were strong, Marie. But be careful. These people have a lot of power. They won't back down easily." Marie nodded. She knew he was right. The road ahead would be more difficult than ever. But she wasn't afraid anymore. She had already faced so much, being humiliated, overlooked, and dismissed. But now, she was the one with the power. She had worked hard for it, and she was not going to let it slip away. "I'm not backing down," she said, her voice unwavering. "This is bigger than just me. This is about showing women that they don't have to be invisible anymore. They don't have to stay stuck in the same cycle of poverty and underappreciation." Vincent's expression softened. "You've got the right mindset," he said, "and I'll be here to support you, however I can." Marie smiled, feeling a surge of gratitude. She knew that Vincent's support meant everything. He had helped her get to this point, and now, she would need to rely on her own strength to move forward. "Thank you," she said quietly, "but I can't do this alone. We're going to need a bigger network, more people to support the program. If I'm going to take this to the next level, I'm going to need more resources." Vincent leaned forward, his eyes gleaming with an idea. "I know people who can help," he said. "Connections, money, influence. If you're serious about taking this further, I can open doors for you." Marie felt a spark of hope. This was the moment when things could change, when she could take the program to a scale that would help even more people. She had worked for years to build a life for herself, and now, she was ready to build something bigger. Something that could change the lives of women all over the city. "Let's do it," she said, her voice full of determination. "Let's take this to the next level." With Vincent's help, Marie knew she had the support and the resources to make her vision a reality. But she also knew that the fight was far from over. The challenges would be greater, the opposition stronger, but she was no longer afraid. She had already risen from the shadows, and nothing was going to stop her now. The weeks that followed the meeting with Vincent were a whirlwind of activity for Marie. With his connections, she had managed to expand her program, bringing in more women who needed the same opportunities she had been given. Her office was now buzzing with the energy of eager women, ready to change their lives. But as the program grew, so did the challenges. There were those who opposed what she was doing, those who felt threatened by the idea of giving people like her and her mints a chance to succeed. Marie had always known that the road to success would be hard, but she had never imagined how much resistance there would be. One morning, as she sat at her desk, her phone buzzed with a new message. It was from one of her mints, Ava. "Marie, I need to talk to you. Something's happened." Marie's heart skipped a beat. Ava had been one of the first women to join the program, and her progress had been remarkable. She had gotten a great job, and her confidence had grown by leaps and bounds. Marie quickly picked up the phone and dialed Ava's number. "Ava, what's going on? I don't know how to say this." Ava's voice trembled. "But I just got fired. The boss said it was because of the program I joined. He said it looked bad to have someone from your program working there." Marie felt a chill run through her. She knew that the opposition to her program was strong, but she hadn't expected it to reach this level. "Ava, I'm so sorry. I'll help you with this. We're not giving up. You've worked too hard." Ava's voice wavered. "I don't know what to do anymore. I thought this was my chance. I thought everything was changing." Marie paused, taking a deep breath. She had been through so much herself, and now, she had to be the strength Ava needed. "Listen to me, Ava. This is just one setback. We've come too far to stop now. I promise you, we will get through this." After their call, Marie felt a new sense of resolve. She couldn't let this defeat define them. This was what they were up against. People who were willing to sabotage lives just to maintain the status quo. But she wasn't going to let them win. She immediately called Vincent, hoping he would be able to help. "Vincent, I need your help," she said, her voice steady but urgent. "Ava's been fired because of the program. They're trying to tear us down, one woman at a time." Vincent's response was immediate. and his voice was laced with anger. "This is exactly what I warned you about. Marie, they won't stop until they've crushed everything you've worked for." "We can't let them," Marie said. "I need your connections, Vincent. We need to expose this." Vincent paused, clearly weighing his options. "I'll handle it. But you need to stay focused on your mission. Don't let them win by distracting you." Marie nodded, feeling the weight of his words. She wasn't going to let them stop her. Later that week, Vincent made a few calls. With his influence, they were able to bring attention to the case, and it didn't take long for the media to get involved. The story of a woman losing her job because she had joined a program designed to help her and others like her made waves. Within days, the company that had fired Ava issued a public apology, and Ava was offered her job back. The support for Marie's program grew exponentially after that. People from all walks of life reached out, offering donations, resources, and support. It was a turning point for the program. The resistance that had once seemed insurmountable now felt like a distant memory. Marie knew that this was only the beginning, but she was ready for whatever came next. That night, as Marie sat in her apartment, reflecting on everything that had happened, she felt a surge of pride. They had faced down the forces that sought to tear them apart, and they had come out stronger. Ava had her job back, and the program was growing stronger than ever. But more importantly, Marie had proven something to herself. She wasn't just a maid anymore. She was a leader, a changemaker, and she wasn't backing down. Her phone buzzed again. It was another message from Vincent. "We've only just begun, Marie. You've got the world's attention now. Keep going." Marie smiled, her heart full of gratitude. She knew that this was just the beginning of something much bigger. She was no longer just helping women find jobs. She was helping them build futures, change lives, and rewrite their own stories. The battle was far from over, but now, Marie felt more ready than ever to face whatever came next. With each passing day, Marie's program continued to flourish. The ripple effect from Ava's situation and the exposure it received had drawn more attention than she had anticipated. The media had picked up the story, and soon after, corporate sponsors and organizations started reaching out to offer their support. Marie was no longer just a woman running a small mentorship program. She was becoming a figurehead of empowerment for those who had been overlooked and forgotten. Still, the challenges kept coming. Every new victory brought about new hurdles. More people began to target her program, whether through subtle intimidation or outright threats. But Marie was no longer the woman who had hesitated when she first left that mansion. She had become a force to be reckoned with. She had faced rejection and hardship before, and this time, she was determined to not let it stop her. The first major test came when a powerful corporate sponsor, one of the largest firms in the city, decided to pull out of their partnership with her program. The reason? They had come under pressure from other industry leaders who believed that helping women from those kinds of backgrounds was too risky. Marie sat in her office, reading the email, her hands shaking with a mix of disbelief and anger. It was a blow, but not one she wasn't prepared for. Vincent had warned her that the closer she got to success, the more she would face resistance. But even then, it felt personal. She had worked so hard to build this program, to show that these women were worth investing in. The idea that a business would turn their back on them because of their past was infuriating. But in that moment, something inside Marie clicked. She had spent years working in silence, blending into the background, trying to survive. But now, she wasn't just surviving. She was living. She had a purpose. And that purpose was bigger than any sponsor or corporate deal. With renewed determination, she picked up the phone and called Vincent. "I just got a message from one of our biggest partners," Marie said, her voice tight. "They're pulling out." Vincent was silent for a moment before responding, his tone calm but firm. "I knew it would happen eventually. These people want to keep the status quo. They're afraid of change." Marie took a deep breath. "Well, I'm not backing down. I've got something bigger in mind." Vincent's voice softened. "I know you won't. And neither will I. We'll find another way." The next few days were a blur. Marie reached out to the women in her program and shared the news. There were some tears, some frustrations, but there was also a shared resolve. They were in this together, and together, they could push through anything. Marie knew she couldn't do it alone. She needed help, not just from Vincent, but from the women who had trusted her and joined her mission. With Vincent's connections, they were able to rally other like-minded businesses, individuals, and nonprofits that were willing to step up and support the program. They found new sponsors who believed in the cause, people who saw the value in giving those who had been overlooked the chance to thrive. By the time Marie sat down for a new partnership meeting, she could feel the energy in the room change. This wasn't just about the program anymore. It was a movement, a fight against the norms that had held people like her and her mints back for so long. The meeting went well, better than expected. The new sponsors, thrilled by the momentum and the dedication that Marie's program had garnered, committed not only to funding, but also to providing resources that would allow the program to expand. "You're not just building a program," one of the new sponsors said, "you're building a community." By the end of the week, Marie had more support than she had ever imagined. The next cohort of women would have better opportunities, better training, and better support. They would no longer just be women looking for work. They would be women who were building careers, gaining confidence, and shaping their own futures. Sitting back in her office, Marie reflected on how much had changed. It felt like a lifetime ago that she had been a maid, invisible, just trying to get by. Now, she was a leader, a mentor, a person who was making a difference. And as she looked at the new faces coming through the door, eager to take control of their own destinies, she knew that the work wasn't done. There would always be obstacles, always be those who wanted to hold people like her back. But Marie had learned that she could face anything head-on, and she was more determined than ever to help others do the same. "This is just the beginning," she whispered to herself. She had come a long way, but now there was no turning back. She wasn't just helping others find jobs. She was giving them a future, and that was something no one could take away. As Marie stood in front of the full room of women, her heart swelled with pride. The program had grown beyond her wildest expectations. The walls of her small office were now filled with awards and certificates, proof of the success that had blossomed from a single idea, a dream that she had fought for, even when it seemed impossible. The women she had helped, the ones who had once been invisible, were now standing strong, reclaiming their futures. Today was a turning point in her journey. It was the day they were launching a new initiative, a scholarship program that would allow the women from the mentorship program to pursue higher education, further their careers, and build the futures they deserved. She had already secured funding from some of the biggest sponsors who believed in the mission. This was the culmination of everything she had worked for. The room was filled with energy. The women were talking, laughing, sharing their stories. Some had already completed the program and were now working in positions they never thought possible. Others were still going through the mentorship, learning, growing, and gaining confidence every day. Marie couldn't help but think about where she had started. She had been a maid, an invisible figure in the grand mansion where she worked. She had been underestimated, belittled, and cast aside. But now, she was standing in front of a room full of women who, just like her, had been told they were not enough. And now, they were enough. Marie looked at them all, her heart full of gratitude. "You've all come so far," she said, her voice ringing through the room. "I know what it's like to feel like you don't belong, like you're just a cog in a machine. But look at what you've achieved. This is just the beginning." The women cheered, and Marie felt the weight of their support. This wasn't just her success. It was theirs too. Together, they had built something powerful. They had created a community of women who were no longer afraid to stand up for themselves, who were no longer willing to accept the roles they were assigned. They were taking control of their own destinies. As the room buzzed with excitement, Marie's phone vibrated on her desk. She glanced at it and saw that it was a message from Vincent. She had spoken to him earlier in the day about the scholarship initiative, but now, the message felt urgent. "Marie, we need to talk. There's something happening that you need to be aware of." Her heart skipped a beat. She had grown used to Vincent's calm demeanor, but his words hinted at something serious. She quickly stepped away from the crowd and called him. "Vincent, what's going on?" she asked, her voice tense. "You're going to want to sit down for this," he replied, his voice uncharacteristically serious. "I've just learned that there's a major push against your program. Some of the higher-ups in the city are trying to shut you down. They're working on pressuring the sponsors, using their influence to cut off the funding." Marie felt a chill in her spine. She had known that the closer she got to real change, the more opposition she would face. But hearing that the very people who had helped her program were now being targeted hit her hard. "What can we do?" Marie asked, her voice steady despite the surge of anxiety that threatened to overwhelm her. "I'm working on it," Vincent said, his tone assuring. But you need to be prepared. This is going to get ugly. Marie hung up the phone, the weight of the news sinking in. This was exactly what she had feared. The people who had once been supportive now wanted to silence her, to stop the momentum they had created. But Marie wasn't going to back down. She had fought too hard to get here. The women in her program had fought too hard. She wasn't about to let their dreams, their futures, be taken away by people who didn't understand what it meant to give someone a chance. She stood tall, her eyes reflecting the determination she had carried all along. She wasn't just fighting for herself anymore. She was fighting for every woman who had ever been told she didn't belong. She was fighting for every woman who had been overlooked, undervalued, and dismissed. We will not be silenced, Marie said to herself, her resolve hardening. We will rise above this. The next few days were a blur of meetings, calls, and strategy sessions. Vincent had come through, pulling strings and gathering support from powerful allies who believed in Marie's cause. The media caught wind of the push to shut down the program, and soon the story was everywhere. What began as an attempt to tear Marie down turned into a public outcry against those who tried to silence her. People from all over the city, business owners, community leaders, even strangers, came forward to lend their support. Sponsors who had previously pulled away now saw the public backlash and decided to stand firm behind the program. The resistance had only made Marie's mission stronger. As she stood in front of the room once more, this time at a press conference to announce the scholarship program officially, she realized how far she had come. Not just in terms of the program's success, but in terms of who she had become. She wasn't just a woman with a vision anymore. She was a woman with a voice, one that had been heard, and one that was going to continue making waves. This is not the end, Marie said, her voice ringing clear. This is just the beginning. And with that, she knew that the work ahead would be just as important as what had already been accomplished. The journey was far from over, but she was ready to face whatever came next. She had built a community, a legacy, and no one could take that away from her. The journey that Marie had started with nothing but a dream had now turned into a powerful movement. It was more than just a program. It had become a symbol of change, a beacon of hope for women who had been told their whole lives that they didn't matter. And as the years passed, Marie saw the impact of her work ripple throughout the city. The scholarship program had not only helped hundreds of women break free from the cycles of poverty and oppression, but had also created a network of empowered individuals who were now advocating for others. The women who had once walked into her program uncertain, afraid, and unsure of their own worth were now leaders, mentors, and role models. Marie couldn't help but smile as she watched one of her first mints, Ava, now running her own nonprofit organization aimed at providing job training for at-risk youth. Ava had started as a timid, unsure woman, uncertain of her place in the world. Now, she was standing confidently, speaking to a room full of young people about the importance of education and hard work. I was once like you, Ava said, her voice strong and full of conviction. I thought I didn't belong, but I found my voice, and now, I'm here to help you find yours. Marie watched from the back of the room, her heart swelling with pride. This was why she had done it. This was the purpose behind every late night, every difficult conversation, and every obstacle she had overcome. She had created a ripple effect that would continue to grow long after she was gone. As the ceremony came to a close, Marie was approached by a woman she didn't recognize. The woman was dressed sharply, her presence commanding. "Are you Marie?" she asked, her voice warm but assertive. "Yes, I am," Marie replied, offering her hand. "How can I help you?" The woman smiled, shaking Marie's hand firmly. "I'm Samantha. I work with a major national nonprofit. We've been following your program's success, and we think it's time to take it to a national level. We want to partner with you, Marie. We want to help you expand your program and give women like you and your mints the chance to change their lives across the country." Marie's eyes widened. This was more than she had ever imagined. She had started this journey with the simple goal of helping a few women, but now, it was becoming something bigger than she could have ever dreamed. "I'm interested," Marie said, her voice steady but filled with excitement. "What would that look like?" Samantha explained the details of the partnership, offering resources, funding, and a platform to expand the program on a much larger scale. Marie's heart raced as she listened. She knew this was the next step, the next challenge, and the next opportunity to change lives. But even with this incredible offer on the table, Marie knew one thing for sure. She wasn't doing this for herself anymore. She was doing it for the women who had trusted her, for the women who had walked into her program and changed their own destinies. She was doing it for those who had been told they didn't belong, but had proven everyone wrong. The next few months were a whirlwind of planning, meetings, and agreements. With the help of Samantha and her organization, Marie's program went national. The women who had once been overlooked by society were now taking charge, breaking down barriers, and creating opportunities for future generations. Marie knew that this was only the beginning. There was still so much to do, so much more work to be done to ensure that every woman who wanted a better life had the resources, the support, and the confidence to get there. But as she stood in front of a new group of women at the national launch event, she realized something profound. She had started with nothing but a dream, a desire to help women like herself. And now, she was standing in front of a room full of women who were ready to change their own lives. "This is just the beginning," Marie said, her voice clear and powerful. "You have everything it takes to change your future. Believe in yourselves. You are not invisible anymore. You are enough." The room erupted in applause, and Marie smiled. The journey that had started so long ago, with a single moment of belief from Vincent, had come full circle. She had faced the impossible and made it possible. And as she looked out over the crowd, filled with hopeful, determined faces, she knew that this was just the beginning of something much bigger. Together, they were unstoppable,